Welcome to the Unusual History of Everything, the podcast that uncovers the unusual history of everything around us. I'm Karen Lacey.
And I'm Melanie Dellis. On this episode, we dig into the whys, what-fors, and oh-nos of grave robbing and what people did with various body parts.
Grave robbing may seem like something people did long ago, but it actually still occurs, unfortunately. For example, in Egypt, archaeologists often have to have security around the clock to prevent people from stealing from the tombs. Most of that is for the gold and expensive tomb-related items. However, sometimes the black market calls for more obscure things like mummy dust. But in the beginning, grave robbing had more to do with the stealing of the corpses themselves than it did with what was buried with them.
During the 1700s, the need for medical students to learn from an actual human body was vital. And in the 1800s, the supply of donated bodies declined so sharply that students turned to stealing freshly buried bodies in the dark of night. Throughout the 1800s in the United States and England, body snatching was a very lucrative business as people known as resurrectionists shipped the corpses around the world and sold them to anatomists for medical dissections.
The resurrectionist hub in the United States was in Maryland due to its temperate climate that allowed for easy digging in the winter, thus ensuring year-round supply of corpses. But the way they exhumed the bodies was not pleasant. They shoveled down until they hit the coffin, broke the lid, and then put a hook around the body's neck or armpit. Then, tying a rope to the hook, they pulled the body out of the grave.
If the body was going to travel to another state or country, they folded it to fit into a barrel and filled the barrel with whiskey to cover the smell of decomposition. But perhaps the most disgusting part of it all was when...
I'm sorry, wait, more disgusting than a whiskey barrel in a body?
Yeah, they just folded the body. It's fine. Okay, the most disgusting part of this situation, I mean, it's all gross, okay? But...
And disrespectful, but
yes, it's disrespectful, it's disgusting, it's sad because the people, their families didn't even know this was happening. So imagine, just for a second before I tell you what was really gross, imagine your dad just died, okay? And you bury him, and then you're like, okay, this sucks, but I have to go back to my university because I'm studying to be a doctor. So you take the train to the university and go back to your school. And the next day or the next week, you go into your medical class and the body you have to dissect is your dad.
Okay, that's messed up.
That's what happened.
No, it totally is what happened. I thought you were going to say something like, I'm going to go back to university, so I'm going to visit the grave one last time. And you see this big gaping hole with a broken coffin being like, where's my dad?
That's
sad both
too.
of those scenarios could totally have happened.
Absolutely, and I'm sure it did. But this one that I'm about to tell you happened all the time, like for sure. Okay, so these resurrectionists folded the corpse into this barrel and they covered it with whiskey to cover the stinky smell. And then when the body reached its destination, it was taken out of the barrel and the whiskey was sold to people to drink.
No.
It was appropriately called rot gut whiskey and is where we get the term stiff drink from. Oh, God.
Did people know that's what they were drinking?
No, they did not.
Oh, no.
Okay, so...
I'm never going to look a bottle of alcohol ever again.
Or just whiskey. Just whiskey.
Okay, so I'm going to stay away from whiskey.
So, rot gut whiskey. I have a lot of questions here, but I think the main one is, would the decomp bacteria do anything to the whiskey to make the people who drank the whiskey sick, or did the whiskey's alcohol content kill the bacteria? It didn't prevent decomp. It might have slowed it down a little bit in the body during the trip.
Yeah, and then the alcohol might have acted as killing a lot of the germs.
Yeah, a lot of the bacteria, because they did pour whiskey onto wounds in that time period to to stop infection or to help before surgery, not, quote unquote surgery. Mm-hmm. So rot gut whiskey though was known, if you drank a lot of it, to really hurt your stomach. And that was another reason why they called it rot gut, because it gave people ulcers and but that could be because they just drank too much, or could it be because it was made of decomp?
I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. I mean, it depending on how long it was in the bottle, too. It could also be okay, I'm just assuming this isn't the good stuff in terms of the whiskey also. Yeah. So it's probably poor quality whiskey. And you can get really sick out of, drinking alcohol that maybe hasn't been fermented long enough.
Right.
Or was just made, super quick.
Yeah.
like moonshine or whatever. So some of those things you can get really sick because it's just not made properly. So
I
don't know.
love too that I'm never gonna say, give me a stiff drink? Like, oh boy, I could use a stiff drink.
No.
I will never say that again.
Yeah, that's not what I thought.
That's
that
not
meant.
the kind of drink I want.
Yeah, no, and that's not what I thought that meant when someone would say that.
No, I know, it's cool though.
Well, grave robbing wasn't just for medical dissection and the occasional stiff drink. It was also for procuring body parts that were prescribed for healing various ailments, and it was popular for centuries. For example, Galen, a 2nd century AD Roman physician, touted an elixir of burned human bones as a cure-all for epilepsy and arthritis. And Paracelsus, a 16th century Swiss alchemist, wrote that the best medicine for a man is man's body, and that the medicinal power of mummy, human blood, fat, marrow, poop, and brain could cure many things.
Why is it always about poop?
I know.
Like every time we have, oh my God.
Because it's a readily available source.
Oh
you could
God.
just say, I need something with vitamins and nutrients with a interesting color and smell. Oh, I'm going to go poop in the corner and put it in my medical mixture. I'm just kidding. But
it's so disgusting.
I don't know. But you're right. There's like a lot of poop being used and stuff.
Well,
although maybe I could see it though, if you think about it though, because of fertilizer, and soil and stuff like that, if you use some poop, it makes a good natural fertilizer.
Anyway, let's look at one of Paracelsus's favorite ingredients for a second, mummy. From about the 12th century to the 18th century, a product called mummia was widely used as a drug. But what was it? In the medical writings of the Middle East, mummia was considered natural mineral pitch, but sounding so similar to mummy, it began to take on a few different meanings. In the 1700s, a doctor named Robert James wrote a pharmaceutical treatise that referred to mummia as anything that was leaking from embalmed human remains. Gross. But he also called the finely ground bones and other remains mummy powder.
Which one would you rather, the liquid or the mummy powder?
For sure, the mummy powder.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, if I had to do one of them, which I don't want to do either, the mummy powder, it somehow seems more palpable. I don't know why.
Because it's not gooey
Liquid.
still. Like, okay,
Yeah.
So a couple months ago, I had to observe an autopsy for school. And after seeing the fluids that do leak out of the body,
It's pretty gross.
I wouldn't want to ingest that. No, I'd rather ingest the powder. I don't care what it would be because it just seems less nasty to me. But if I had my choice, I would do neither.
Yeah, no, I would do neither.
Yeah.
16th and 17th century Europe really enjoyed using human bits for various ailments. People began stealing bodies from graves, and even Egyptian mummies were used to cure everything from headaches and epilepsy to bruises on your skin. Basically, they would take bits of the body and turn it into a powder that you would either put on your wounds or mix with water and drink. It was called corpse medicine, and everything from brains to blood was used.
When Egyptian mummies became too hard to come by, shysters took dead lepers, beggars, and even camels, and passed them off as authentic mummy cures.
How could you pass off a camel? I'm
Well,
sorry.
because people don't know, they would just grind up those bits into powder, right, and just say this is from a mummy.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're like, whatever. In 1651, a doctor named John French wrote a book called The Art of Distillation, which sounds like a cool how-to book on making alcohol at home, but it's actually a book where he touts eating brains, just like a zombie, might I add, to cure epilepsy. Quote, "Take the brains of a young man that hath died a violent death, mash in a stone mortar, steep in wine, and digest it half a year in horse dung before distilling." End quote. Horse dung. There's poop again. Like, seriously. Ugh.
Nope.
People in the poop. I don't get it.
During this time of medical exploration and experimentation, if we really want
That's
to
where we want to go. I guess they were experimenting.
we're just going to use whatever's around us. Hey, look, there's some horse poop.
You haven't tried that yet.
Physicians took on the theory of quote-unquote like cures like. Originating from a 16th century Swiss physician named Theophrastus von Hohenheim, aka Paracelsus. Basically, if epilepsy stems from the brain, then use brains to cure it.
Duh.
And of course, wine and horse poop.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I do get the idea of like cures like. Like, I understand that concept. I just don't understand. And the wine, because it makes it palatable. The poop, no.
Well, there is that wine, I think it's from Korea, that's made out of little kid poop.
No.
It's fermented. That's another podcast that you'll hear later on. But yeah,
Well,
there
we
is
talked
that.
we talked about that one, in that.
Yeah.
Well, moving back to our
Cures like.
But why always a dead body part from someone who died violently? Well, also at this time was a common belief that someone died violently, their life force would gather in greater concentration within their body and would therefore give the sick person a greater chance of being cured. Sort of like an energy jolt. This probably refers to the adrenaline and the epinephrine released during times of fear, which makes the body feel stronger and energetic. The catch is only someone in the prime of their life, when killed, will do, as the elderly would only make you take on their infirmity.
For the same reasons just mentioned, Germans in the mid-18th century used the fat of executed people to make a salve known as hangman's salve to relieve pain. This cure-all was mixed with anything from rosemary to goat's blood and became so popular that executioners were often more sought after than physicians. I'm surprised they didn't say it was mixed with anything from rosemary to poop. Goat's poop.
Right.
Which it probably did.
Yeah.
Goat's blood was just the first thing I saw. Anyway, the executioners would also give people some of the dead's blood to drink, as they believed it would cure nosebleeds or stop wounds from bleeding. Instead of seeing a doctor, they would take cups and handkerchiefs to an execution, give the executioner some money, and soak up the blood from a freshly cut off head or slit wrist from someone hanged. Oh, God.
I know, not to mention the transfer, though, from blood to blood, that's happening a lot, in this time period. And I'm surprised we're not hearing of more people being sick from that. But I guess we didn't have some of the things that we have in people's blood today that can get transferred to you, I guess. We just didn't really have to worry about some of that yet.
Yeah, and I think that what happened quite often is that people would drink this blood and, depending on the quantity, would throw up, because that's what happens a lot when our bodies are not used to digesting large amounts of blood. Like if you have a bloody nose or something and a little bit goes down your throat.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's fine. But I remember as a kid, I used to have such bad nosebleeds that tons of blood. And at the time, the doctors, this was back in the early 80s, the doctors would tell you, tilt your head back and pinch your nose. But that's the wrong thing to do, because the blood goes down your throat.
Yeah.
And I had so much blood in my stomach was like, what the heck? And I threw it all up, large amounts of this blood, right? So that's probably, if they drank too much of it, they threw it up and then thought, I must be throwing up the bad sickness. The blood is causing the sickness to be expelled from my body. And if they only drank drops of it or whatever and then started to feel better, who knows? They probably, somebody obviously got better and they were like, oh, that worked. And so,
Exactly. I mean, there's so many things, and we've talked about this before, this mind over medicine kind of situation,
Yeah.
Pliny the Elder, along with several ancient medical doctors, also touted the magical benefits of blood to cure epilepsy. Sounds easy and great. The catch? You had to drink it from the neck of a dead gladiator.
Ooh, like a vampire.
Uh-huh. That's right. After a fight was over, people in the crowd would rush to the dead or dying body of the losing gladiator and drink the blood. Surprisingly, people did it often. Really surprising is that people continue to do it for centuries. When gladiator fighting stopped in 400 AD, doctors switched it to drinking the blood of executed criminals, particularly the ones who were beheaded. And this wonderful tradition lasted in Europe until the early 20th century, believe it or not.
Although today we may not drink the blood of executed criminals to relieve sickness or just stay healthy, we do use blood to try to stay young and beautiful. Take the vampire facial, a great example of modern day like cures like, that many celebrities tout as being great for making your skin look young and healthy. Skincare specialists will take some of your blood, put it in a centrifuge to get the platelet-rich plasma out, use a micro-needling device to puncture your skin, and then paint your face with the blood. It's supposed to activate stem cells in the skin in order to produce younger tissue. There are even skin creams you can have made from your own blood that are supposed to heal acne scars and even your skin tone. Sure, it costs about $1,400, but beauty is pain, even if that pain is in your wallet. But I'm bummed. Yeah. Have you ever tried one of those vampire facials?
Yeah, because I just have 1,400 lying around.
I haven't tried it either, but I've seen it done.
No, really?
Yes.
Here?
Yes,
idea?
I've seen it done. One of my friends took me to a spa, I guess you could call it, where they do this kind of treatments and stuff, like facials and stuff. And yeah, it was kind of cool to like watch the centrifuge go and like, but they literally had to take her blood out. Like they took her blood out.
I guess I'd rather it be my own blood than someone else's, but
For sure. But it looks crazy. Like they do punch holes all over your skin and then you have blood on your face like you're in the movie Carrie. It's pretty gross.
no.
But the really awful part for me and why I would not do it is that you're punctured and red. Like they wipe the blood off, obviously, but then you're red like that and
For at least a couple of days,
Yeah,
right?
like, for a
Because you have
few
all these little
days.
baby, like little scabs, I'm sure.
yeah. It's
Does she do this often?
No. And, honestly, I don't even know if it worked. Like, she looks the same. She's pretty and she looks the same. And I don't really, but I mean, like, people like to try new things and I get it. I see why it's
Yeah.
appealing.
Sure.
I guess. At least it's not poop.
Right. Here, poop into this jar, and then we're going to do micro whatever. on your face. Oh, no. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow the Unusual History of Everything podcast on Instagram at the Unusual History of Everything and on Facebook at the Unusual History of Everything podcast. And find our show notes on www.musecuratorial.com. The Unusual History of Everything is written, produced, and directed by Melanie Dellis and Karen Lacey.
New episodes air every Tuesday on all podcast outlets. Be sure to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode and leave us a review. You can also see photos from our episodes and more on our website, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Melanie Dellis.
And I'm Karen Lacey, your host for the Unusual History of Everything.
Da, da, da.